today, I want to talk about how AI exploits you. I think when AI first came out, we sat in a Discord and we spent hours generating like art. And I have some examples of the art that we generated. Gumby, Exodia Yu-Gi-Oh card. I was trying to get like an Eldritch Horror Gumby, and I think I did like Gumby Eldritch Horror manga, and this is what I got. We got stuck on Gumby for a while, don't ask. And then also we have Gumby in Persona 4 with Naoto Shirogane going on a water slide. Those are just, you know, the obvious sort of things to put in. Those are kind of like everyone's first. At the time, I was a big fan of AI art in general. It was cool, and I kind of didn't really think about it a ton, but there's just, for whatever reason, my TikTok algorithm thinks I really am into digital art. Gives me like Adobe Illustrator tutorials all the time. Also does is it gives me digital artists in general. And I remember the first time seeing a digital artist make a TikTok against AI art. One of the things they were saying is that there were people going to some of these AI art discords and generating art explicitly to steal their art style, try to replace them. I saw that and it was kind of disconcerting at the time, but I basically, after seeing that, started looking at AI in general through a little bit more of a critical lens. I think there's a lot of pretty bad implications for art in general, but also just society in general when it comes to AI and what they're going to do. The first thing you have to understand when you think about AI art or AI in general is that AI must be trained by a human with human generated input, right? If I want to make an image with Gumby, I have to teach the AI, this is a picture of Gumby. There's just no way around it. And there are ways to train AI ethically, and there are certainly ways to train AI unethically. And I think one of the unethical ways that AI has been trained is by just stealing en masse everybody's art. There's a website called haveibeentrained.com. Stable Diffusion, DALL-E Mini, all of these platforms, a lot of them have been basically trained on this one data set. And on this website, you can kind of search anything that shows up here. All of the AI art stuff has been trained on this data. And there are commercial products that use this stuff. So just a couple examples, literally Smosh. The likenesses of Smosh are in this data set. And this is just the very top of it. And there's this artist, Yayoi Kusama, really cool art, and it's just in this data set. And then if you just search like DeviantArt, all of these small independent artists, their art is just yoink. When this data set was created, there was absolutely no restrictions on what they would take. They just scraped everything. That means there's copyrighted stuff in there. There's people's personal art. There have been cases of private medical images being found in this data set. Yeah, it's a lot fucked up. And you might be wondering, like, how is that legal, right? Like, how could a company who's making money off of this use all this copyrighted imagery? And they've done kind of a shady thing. They've found the sort of loophole. Basically, OpenAI, the company that got all of this data together, is a non-profit. And non-profits have much less strict regulations around them in terms of what they can use, right? If a nonprofit, this nonprofit in general is basically saying we are a research nonprofit, we are not for commercial use. But this nonprofit is partnered directly with this for-profit company. And it's interesting because they kind of self-report here. They say, we want to increase our ability to raise capital while serving our mission, and no pre-existing legal structure we know of strikes the right balance. Our solution is to create an OpenAI LP as a hybrid of for-profit and non-profit, which we are calling a capped profit company. They're basically just saying, hey, this is illegal and we're not allowed to do this. So we're making up our own new thing. We're calling it capped profit so we can have the benefits and lack of oversight as a research non-profit while also still making a ton of money. And you might be like, well, it's capped profit, so maybe they're doing it in a way that they really can't make money on it and whatever. You think that, but if you go and you look in simplified term, and if you invested 10 million today, the profit cap will come into play only after that 10 million has generated 1 billion in return. So it's like, oh, we're capped profit because you can only make 100x your money. What the fuck are you talking about? And companies like Microsoft, I believe, have invested $1 billion into this, so they could get $100 billion back. This is just ridiculous. They just want to be able to use the lack of oversight that a nonprofit research, nonprofit gets to justify this. That's one way that AI is exploiting you, right? It's, if you're watching this video, your personal images could be in the data set. All of us, right? There was no limitation into what sort of stuff was taken for this data set. If you want your image out of the data set, all you have to do is subscribe and it will definitely get removed from the data set. They sent me a letter. They said, if you subscribe to the YouTube. So I'm not saying that you should do that, but if you want to get out of the data set, that seems like a pretty good way to do it. I'm just reading a chat message. I'm not saying one way or the other. The other way you're being exploited, or people are being exploited by AI, is if you think about stuff like ChatGPT. I don't know if you've seen it. We can literally open it up right now. It's a conversational AI. Tell me why it is unethical for AI art to use copyrighted art. Right, it'll do this. It'll be conversational, right? We've seen it. We've all seen ChatGPT. ChatGPT in the past, there have been previous iterations, and the previous iterations of ChatGPT or these types of conversational AIs have been incredibly racist and sexist and homophobic and all these terrible, terrible things. And again, one of the reasons is that there's really no limit into what is being put into this training data and what's being scraped from the internet. So if you think about your images might be there, if you have any text related work that's online, that could also absolutely be in those data sets. But a lot of people have noticed that this most recent version is a lot better. But the problem is that AI can't learn on its own. It can't learn to filter that stuff out, right? So humans theoretically have to do that. And so the question is, how did ChatGPT get so much less racist and homophobic and these terrible, terrible things in the previous version? Well, the reason that that's happened is this. OpenAI used Kenyan workers on less than $2 per hour to make ChatGPT less toxic. Again, another way that AI is exploiting us is the fact that someone has to do this. And this OpenAI company underpaid these workers to sift through the most vile, awful stuff that was training data for ChatGPT. Like I'm not even going to repeat some of the stuff, but if you just think about the internet as a whole in its entirety, there is a lot of terrible, terrible stuff on it. The AI can't determine one way or the other. These workers, these underpaid exploited workers, had to go through and read this awful stuff and label it as, what it was. They were, promised mental health care and like counseling, which they did not receive. They were obviously underpaid. And it's just another way where we look at something like ChatGPT and it seems like this really cool, fun tool that's awesome to use. Nothing is magic. There is always a cost to these things. In terms of AI right now, that cost is, people having to read this awful stuff, our art and our intellectual property just being stolen. And, it makes the fun of AI really have this sort of dark cloud around it. That's really unfortunate, but it doesn't have to be that way. There is actually precedent for ethical training. This example of ethical AI training comes from the same company, Stability AI, that is stealing from all of these small artists. They are at the same time ethically training audio AI. There is this Dance Diffusion AI. On their website, there is a very telling piece of text. It says, Dance Diffusion is also built on datasets composed entirely of copyright-free and voluntarily provided music and audio samples. Because diffusion models are prone to memorization and overfitting, releasing a model trained on copyright data could potentially result in legal issues. In honoring the intellectual property of artists while also complying to the best of their ability with the often strict copyright standards of the music industry, keeping any kind of copyrighted material out of the training data was a must. So it's not like they can't ethically train AI models, but they are explicitly choosing not to. There is a gross double standard where this audio AI is being trained far more ethically than the, ChatGPT or the DALL-E image generation stuff. I think there's honestly a pretty simple reason as to why that's the case. The music industry has a large amount of capital that they can use to go after companies like this. Independent artists, small artists, digital creators, comic creators, writers, all these people as individuals, they don't have the same sort of legal leverage that these big music conglomerates do. These companies, right at their core, these capitalist companies are going to exploit unless we push back against it. There is a model here for doing AI training in a way that is, not using copyrighted material. After a lot of pressure, companies like Stability AI have gone to an opt-out system where if you want your stuff taken out, you can take it out. But honestly, it should be opt-in. They should make sure it's not in there unless you say, hey, I want my stuff in there. But I don't think that companies will do it unless they are forced to do it. But I think all of us have to be a little bit more cognizant about how AI are exploiting artists, exploiting people in general. And as new technology comes out that seems magical and too good to be true, to be wary, right? We can embrace change and we can embrace new technologies. I think we can have cool AI that is fun to use and interesting to use, that is not exploitative and is not unethical. But we need to be very careful because right now it most certainly is. So that's kind of all I have to say about that. If you want to know more, an amazing video essay called The End of Art, an argument against image AIs. Or it's like 45 minutes long. It's fantastic. It paints a very bleak picture. It's a little depressing, but it is certainly very good. And I will link to that as well. I would definitely check it out. In all seriousness, this is gonna go on a couple platforms. Spent a lot of time working on this video. If you can subscribe, if you're watching, I'd appreciate it.